enhancing innovation and regulation. Well, the topic sounds really beat up topic, right? Nowadays, everyone is talking about trustworthy AI, innovation and regulation. But what we have is an amazing panel which is representing industry, representing policymakers, society and regulators. So if someone can actually throw or shed some good light on this topic, it is going to be this particular panel. So my name is Syed Ahmad. I'm Global Head of Responsible AI Office in Infosys, and it's a great privilege and honor for me to welcome this amazing panel. In this panel, I have Ankur Singh, who is from FinTech Department in the Reserve Bank of India. Maria Garcia, she's a good friend and represents UNESCO. And Caitlin, from Australian High Commission. So very quickly, before we get started, you want to very quickly introduce yourselves before Ankur?
Hello everyone, I think you have already introduced that much is enough. So I work with the FinTech Department of Reserve Bank of India. The department is responsible for fostering innovation in the financial sector, FinTech, as well as working with the emerging technologies.
So Maria Grazia Squiccerini from the Social Human Sciences sector at UNESCO. And actually UNESCO, perhaps most of you don't know, because you know very well the work we do on culture, for instance, and the cultural heritage locations. But we do a lot of work about the ethics of science and new technologies. And so UNESCO has been concerned about the ethics, and I'll explain later what we mean by that, of artificial intelligence, to the point that we issued, and your country, among other 193, adopted the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence that has informed all the work we've been doing so far. So you'll hear more about this.
Thank you.
G'day, Namaskar. My name is Caitlin. I'm with the Australian government team in India. I've been here 3 years. I manage the Australian government's relationship with the science and technology agencies like MATI, Department of Science and Tech, Biotech. I'm a public servant, long time, about 15 or 16 years, in a regulatory role, in a policy role, never anything to do with AI. I will just take this opportunity to plug that we have some amazing Australian experts in and around all week around AI science, AI safety, and we also have a trade delegation here. So I will do my best on this panel. If you want detailed sort of discussions, I would very much encourage you to visit the Australia booth in Hall 14 this week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Caitlin, maybe I should start with you. Let's start with little what I call as icebreaker questions. Right? What is the most ordinary, almost boring use of AI that you typically do?
Well, as I said, I've been here 3 years. I love India. I travel a lot. And it sounds very, very simple, but the Google auto collage images. My first couple of months in India, I'd go away for the weekend to the Taj or to Kerala or something, and I would waste hours trying to filter through very average photos that I've taken. And now it's just this time saver. Top 10 photos, please, from my weekend away in Aurangabad. Love it.
Have you photoshopped your photos with Taj Mahal or any other?
Not quite yet. I do like the auto corrections.
Auto corrections.
Auto corrections, a huge time saver. And I mean, full disclosure, I don't think anyone back in Australia thinks I've done it. Like, they know I'm relying on tools, but it's a huge help and a huge time saver. And it gets those amazing photos that I'm constantly asked for to Australia very, very quickly.
Okay. Have you inserted yourself in a photo that was not taken originally?
No.
Using AI?
No, and I would never do that.
Yeah,
the photos
that
are impressive
be
nonetheless. I tell you what,
I
do have to keep reminding myself to turn off the WhatsApp group photos that collects in your storage bank. And so all of a sudden I have this amazing collage and 1 or 2 photos I have no recollection of, people I've never seen. But that's on me. That's a default I have to fix. But that's the only hiccup at the moment.
Good. Thank you for that. Maria Garcia, you spoke about UNESCO being custodian of culture and heritage, and you also spoke about a lot of AI that work you're doing. Few weeks ago, there was this incident of OpenClaw, Maltbook and Maltbots coming in. Within a week, they had their own language that humans couldn't understand. It was a social networking site. that was created only for agents. Humans couldn't join the social networking site. But we could read all the postings that were happening on the site that was there. Now, within a week, they came up with their own religion, they came out with their own language, their own jokes, and they started posting on their problems and things like that. You are in a very unique position. In UNESCO, if agent starts building their own culture, new language, norms, and all that, would UNESCO step in to protect it as a digital heritage?
Well, actually, UNESCO always steps in. Now, whether we would protect it as cultural heritage, that's a different thing that comes typically from the countries asking to support things. But let me underline one thing that I think is the beauty of the recommendation that UNESCO adopted in 2021, and is that the principles that were in there apply to any type of technology as it evolves, because we all know what AI was 3 years ago is anywhere near what we see today. And our digital natives that we hear here in the room actually will know a completely different type of AI in the future. Now, what was smart of the experts that informed the recommendation, and then of the countries when they adopted it, is to have a definition of artificial intelligence which was actually related to the key components of it without having a very strict definition, and having principles and informing policy areas, which are actually 11 in the recommendation, which are always valid. So the principle you were mentioning implicitly, the redressal. If things are wrong, who does what? Where is the mechanism at stake that actually will allow anybody that is actually suffering, for instance, from whatever wrong done by AI, for that to be stopped and be, for instance, compensated? The human oversight, you didn't mention it, but I mean, countries agreed for the good of people, for the good of any individual, that the last word should not be with a machine. Also because machines are as intelligent as those that program them in the back. Let's never forget that. So even if now you hear a lot of things, even by the time agents, for instance, kick into the picture, when we were just waiting to enter here, I'm so happy to see so many people interested. We were talking about the fact that agents have been with us now for perhaps more than a year in the bulk, right? And we were expecting the agents to explode. Agents due to explode. Has anybody given a thought about perhaps the language between inclusiveness of AI and agents' pervasiveness? I don't think sufficiently, because I think all of you use this speech-to-text facilities you have in your computers, in your phone. How many times it goes wrong writing? Because your accent, I'm Italian, you can hear it by the time I speak, and perhaps I speak even fast, so the machine has an issue with that. And then, so by the time you think about languages that are not really leveraged in AI, and therefore cannot be really understood well, that's one of perhaps the caveat that links the lack of use or the lack of explosion of AI to what can be done. Because if the idea is that I have to give a command, a vocal command to the agent, and the agent, we don't understand each other. We are like in a couple where one speaks and the other doesn't listen. So it's not going to go anywhere. And this is why we keep saying in UNESCO, and I'll close it here on this point, that inclusiveness does not only benefit the included. Of course it does. I'm a woman. We are less than represented in the AI world. But it doesn't benefit only me, because that enables better AI to be developed. The algorithm perform better. The algorithm can also seize a greater market share, and they can overperform others that are inferior. So I think this question, like innovations versus regulation, innovation versus policy steering and frameworks, is put in the wrong way.
Okay. I will try to reframe when I come back to you. But coming to Ankur, again, there's still a, icebreaker question. So I will ask you this. There is so much of talk about autonomous AI agents. If an AI agent were to walk into RBI asking for a loan, will it get it? And if it gets, what are the risk parameters that you will assess it with? And what will the interest rate be?
Okay. So sorry to disappoint you, because if an AI agent walks into RBI, we will say no, because RBI is not into lending.
Okay, that's a smart one, yeah.
So we don't need to assess any creditworthiness on that front. But yeah, I understand your question in the way that agents are getting more and more integrated into the workflows now. A lot of banks are using agents in the back end, but there would be a time when agents will represent people, entities, who would probably pursue a loan application, go visit a branch, not physically, but yes, of course, through the APIs, and they will initiate an application on their behalf. So the way I see it, there's always, like she said, there's always a person associated with the agent. There's always a person in the back. So you cannot say that, okay, this particular agent I need to assess. You always have to assess the entity, the person who is applying the loan. And the same process will continue to follow. This is what I feel. The same process that we are doing right now, the creditworthiness will be assessed of that particular entity and individual. How we can use AI to assess that as well. We can always use alternate data. We can use the behavior of a person. How is the repayment behavior? How is the payment behavior? All those aspects can be taken into consideration. They can be modeled. And agents can then take the task ahead. But just the agent, it's probably like Terminator walking into your room. No, I don't think so. We are the sentient being. We're not there yet. But in case, if at all, in a future something like that happens, then we will have to assess how explainable a particular model is, or how auditable a particular model is, how accurate a model is, and then on that basis, you'll start assessing, okay, this particular model deserves something or doesn't deserve something.
Okay, I have a follow-up question on that, but I'll come back to you. When I come back, maybe I'll counter that. And it would be very interesting to hear your views on that. But here's the thing. We heard all the panelists, and the thing about trustworthy AI and this particular panel is they represent all different walks of life, the policymakers, the regulators, the society. So in your words, Caitlin, if I can start with you, everyone has different vantage points and perspective. From your perspective, what are the key non-negotiables when it comes to trustworthy AI?
I'm sure we've sort of probably touched on several of those principles already. To add a new one, more explicit into the mix, I guess that sense of transparency. As a government trying to understand what the risks are, trying to protect their citizens from harm, trying to encourage industries to be competitive and don't miss the boat, that's all the considerations we need to take into account and balance. And so that transparency is a big one for us. How do we make sure people understand, can engage with, understand the risks so that governments and others are prepared to mitigate them or to prevent them?
So transparency goes hand in hand with being able to explain, explainability as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, very interesting.
Well, trustworthiness for UNESCO is one of the components that need to be there. That is also because we try to hook what we mean by ethical to human rights. In the language of UNESCO, what countries have adopted is actually meaning that AI needs to abide by human rights, human dignity, so human always at the center, and fundamental freedoms. And trust in someone is a component of it, but in our idea, it's a subset of it. Because then there is, and the ethical principle, the way of creating, developing, using, implementing, deploying AI systems, and I underline AI systems and not the technology itself only, because we often forget that things might go wrong by the time systems go in the wild. That is, you have programmed whatever algorithm, you have tested, you have designed it the best way you can, taking into account perhaps all the particular facets of the part of the population it's supposed to abide by. But then by the time you go and you deploy it in reality, that's when things go wrong. Now, what amazes me at times is that if you think about a car and you think that you won't have any post-sale service, you wouldn't buy that car, right? Because it's like, well, if I'm in the street and I get stranded, what do I do? Well, you will be surprised that the majority of AI systems, they are created with all care, perhaps, and then by the time they go deployed in the wild, tested in the wild, there is very often lack of post-sale or post-deployment type of follow-up. And that's the moment in which things can go substantially wrong. So in our mind, trust and trustworthiness is a really key aspect, because I need to trust the technology. Also because let's remember one thing, that is, AI algorithms and the quality thereof, as one of the important components in it, is data and the quality of the data themselves. Now, if we, users, start saying no to many things by the time we interact with the AI system, the data that the AI system is able to gather is patchy by brute force, because it will know, for instance, I'm blonde, but it wouldn't know that I'm tall X centimeters or whatever my weight is, right? And so we'll have a very partial idea about me as an individual. And as a matter of fact, if we put that then a scale with all the people that go and that enter the data, then the data in the back that are used for AI are actually patchy and need to be fixed, which means the likelihood that the predictions that the system are able to deliver are actually inferior and might go wrong more often. So there is also the issue of bias that is very important to the trustworthiness of the technology.
Absolutely. I think you put it very nicely. If you're able to trust the technology, trust the AI, will adopt it. And for you to be able to trust it, you need to do a lot of things. Transparency, explainability, bias, everything. It's mother of all things that we need to do to be able to trust the technology, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not about one thing. It's a set of components. Sometimes they say, there is this that is available, the other one not, but it's okay. Well, no, with AI, you need to have at least a bit of everything for it to work. But it's actually something that helps the technology itself and helps deliver for the people. And I think you put a very important question before that is about where do we have to watch out for? Well, I think in order for any technology, this applies to AI, but as applied to any other technology in the past, in order to have technology bloom, innovation to bloom, we don't have to decide what do we want the technology to do, because that is left really to the creativeness of the scientists that are in the back, etc. We nevertheless need to agree on what we surely don't want the technology to do, because that's about ensuring our rights and putting safeguard the fundamental freedoms and what it defines us as people and as human beings.
That boundary is quite important. Ankur, I'm sure you will start with security, but go ahead.
No, I mean, so when it comes to trustworthy AI, especially in the financial sector, it needs to protect the system as a whole. I mean, the entire financial system, the sector is based on this trust. You deposit your money in a bank account and you trust that money will be there by until and unless when you're going to take it out. What happens if you have an agent and you have no idea that that agent is probably debiting your account, depositing in a crypto wallet or something else, trading, and then the money comes back to you. It can be, it's the same amount at the end of the day. You feel that, okay, it's the same, but some activity happened with your money. At the end of the day, it's going to be accountable to you. So if AI has to be trustworthy, AI has to follow what you want AI to do. Even an inaccurate AI can be trustworthy, in my opinion, personal opinion. See, imagine a 90% accurate AI can be trustworthy because you know that 10% of the time it will fail. You are aware about that. But if an AI starts claiming that I am a 100% accurate AI and is lying to you in a way, hallucination is the biggest challenge, because when it hallucinates, you don't know, it doesn't tell you that I am wrong. Saying that I am wrong is still fine, but giving you an inaccurate answer, doing things on your behalf in an inaccurate way, that is where the trust goes.
Yeah, quite interesting, absolutely. Totally agree with you. Let me shift gears a little bit, and I'll come to you, Caitlin. So, sometime last year, in October, Australian government published guidance for AI adoption, which outlines 6 essential practices. This actually simplifies the 10 guardrails that we had previously on voluntary AI safety standard. What was the vision behind this, and how do you see this playing out?
Thank you. The Australian government has been one of the early movers when it comes to ethical AI. I think we were one of the first to develop to publish a set of voluntary ethical standards, I think back in 2019. And since then, it's really been this conversation with the Australian public. This is how the government phrases it. We don't want to rush into things. We want to get things right. We want to have our experts develop these voluntary principles, guidance, adoption, those sorts of things, and test them with industry. my home department in Canberra, in Australia, is the Department of Industry, Science and Resources. So it's a mega department. If we compare it against the Indian system, it's sort of combined commerce, Métis, science and tech, biotech, ISRO, in-space, heavy industries, mines, petroleum, and probably 6 others. Mega department, but I think core to it is that industry function. And our people go and engage with Australian industry. How can they be competitive in a globally competitive environment when we're sort of down under? We let's face it, we're the arse end of the world. You know, distance is difficult. Like, we need competitive companies. So part of our core function, and I think that is really sort of bleeds into the approach we've taken, or the Australian government has taken, is to developing these guidance and adoption tools, because we've tested them with industry. We've said some of these things are voluntary. We've sat with experts and said, how does this work? We know that supporting adoption in a responsible way is key to competitiveness, but it's also key to our broader responsible AI toolkit. It's all this systems thinking. So that was a great development a few months ago, as I said earlier, toward the end of last year. And of course, in December, 2 or 3 months later, we released the National AI Plan, of which that keeping Australians safe is one of 3 pillars of that.
So this is very good initiative, and it is voluntary even now. So is there any roadmap towards making it mandatory or regulatory in nature? Not yet?
Not quite yet. As I said, this conversation with the Australian public, industry, all sorts of stakeholders, getting that feedback, testing things. I think the broader approach, as I said, over the last couple of years, and we're seeing it in all countries, is we said, you know, the technology is moving so fast. How do we develop a framework, a governance framework that can respond to these risks nimbly, but also without impeding innovation? So we are watching this all the time. We're setting up our own Australian AI Safety Institute that'll start operations in the next few weeks, hopefully, to sort of embed those capabilities in the Australian government to better track and monitor these things as well, and then go to the policymakers and the regulators and see what needs to happen or what do we need to tweak.
Okay. Very nice. My next question is, Maria Garcia. So we actually met a couple of years ago in a very similar panel, and at that time I was very advocating our framework that we had, the ethics framework, and I was trying to convince everyone, saying that it is the greatest. And that time you did convince me, saying that why will anyone pay to use your ethics and your frameworks, or for that matter, one country's. So you are way ahead, and UNESCO was one of the first to come out with a ethical model, which is kind of agreed by almost 200 countries now, right? So. And it was not only the kind of the preachy work that was there. You did go ahead and create this practical governance tools like Readiness Assessment Methodology, RAM, and then Global AI Ethics and Governance Observatory. What was the philosophy behind this? And are you seeing the support that you expected when you started?
Yes, it has been a lot of work, but we were very happy to do that. So the logic is very simple. Whomever is in a decision-making position, very often you hear like, oh, you should improve this. Like, for instance, if you're the Minister of Labour, say, oh, it would be good to improve employment by 3%. And then nobody tells you how, right? So you're left with these fantastic thoughts, and everybody agrees that that's the way to go. But then how do you go from A to B? That's a different question. And this was very clear by the time we were discussing the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, that we needed to have in the recommendation itself not only a clear idea of the components that need to be at stake, and these were framed in the context of the 11 policy areas to which this recommendation applies, from education to privacy to data, but fundamentally, and that's actually what you asked me before, that is about culture, the environment, and gender, because these are 3 things that are given for granted, but in the AI space cannot be given for granted. And then the idea was like, countries were like, okay, very nice, these 11 policy areas, these are the principles, these are the values that we are agreeing upon. How do we go from, principle to practice? And that's exactly what we did. So, we were asked to compile 2 instruments that could help them then implement the recommendation at home. One is the readiness assessment methodology, and actually I'm really pleased and proud to say that we are going to launch the India one this afternoon at 3:30. And this basically is an approach, thank you, Well, the credit goes to the colleagues here in Delhi that have been working on this and all your policymakers that have been involved in this. The idea of data analysis is to give you a snapshot of where you are in terms of endowment of infrastructure, human capital, institutional setting, coherence thereof, legislation that exists, components that need to be at stake for AI to be able to actually serve societies and for agents, public and private, to be able to use and leverage AI in a way that is really ethical. Then we were also, of course, we are fully aware that even if we were early in the game of AI, like our countries were starting to discuss to get to the recommendation already in 2019. And I mean, Australia, of course, was also around the table. But you know that AI is always in the making. And there are already algorithms that are out there and systems that are out there. And so we developed what is called the ethical impact assessment, which is a tool that actually says, regardless of the stage of development in which an AI system is, we have to ensure that, the outcome, the deliverable, is actually complying with human rights, human dignities, and fundamental freedoms. To date, we have 77 going, and we have discussion with other 4 countries, member states, that have gone through the RAM. They either have finalized it, or they are starting now, or are in the process of completion. And what have we learned from that? Well, a lot. To start with, that there is no such a thing as the best practice. Forget about that. Nobody, even those that have done AI for a long time, had the whole set right. So there is a learning for everybody from the analysis done in each and every country. And that's why we keep pushing for everybody to go through this. And we are very convinced of evidence-based policymaking in the sense that unless you nail down, first of all, whether there is a problem and which one it is, and how you define it and what are the components, then solution can be worse than the problem itself. And that's why we think the RAM is very important to tell countries these are areas where you might need to improve and to offer them possibilities based on analysis done in other countries that perhaps have that very problem sorted out in a way that is compatible with your system, with your approach. And actually, Katie was mentioning it before, and then we have to pay attention to an expression that is a bit complicated to say, but actually is very important in practice, that is regulatory interlink, the fact that it can be linked to each other or can be actually used in a setting that is multilateral. Because AI is a technology that doesn't know any boundaries. And therefore, if we start putting settings and frameworks that actually speak only to a local type of setting, it means that in reality, your business, your users, will face a number of problems because every time they will need to go elsewhere, they will need to adapt. And adaptation costs actually can raise the cost of the technology itself.
I have a follow-up question on being a multilateral AI, but I will ask that a little later. But I have a comment to make. On RAM, it is not something that is airdropped suddenly right now, right? I mean, I know that you have been touring across the globe, evangelizing this for quite some time. And this is more than a year now?
Yeah, it's much more than that. The RAM was ready, actually already in 2022. And so we started working, and UNESCO as priority, this is called priority area, so we actually started very soon with the support, for instance, of Japan as countries, the McGovern Foundation, that I'm happy the president is here today with us, the European Commission, that actually supported us to perform the RAMs, even in countries that wouldn't be able to afford to do this activity. And then we constituted 2 groups. One of them, actually an initiative you mentioned, that is the observatory, that is, by the time we create knowledge, that knowledge to benefit society and humanity has to be shared. So that was one of the principles. But then, of course, in order to understand better the context of the RAMs, we needed to also work with local experts and bring experts from other places because the nuances are many. You need economists, you need IT specialists, you need lawyers, you need regulators. And so we have created this expert of AI without borders, ethical experts of AI without borders. The idea being of having people that are knowledgeable about what ethical AI means and the specific aspect that may be a stake, for instance, a regulation on data, for instance, and be able to be deployed in a country that has realized actually needs to address that shortcoming, and be able to do it in a swift and in a way that is actually enabling this this ability to advance and also avoid, to some extent, mistakes done in the past, because pioneers might have advantages because they are first off to develop something, but very often the risk, not doing perhaps the perfect thing or the best thing that can be done because it's an exploration phase that may or may not be successful. So also to learn from the good things done elsewhere, but also by the mistake, thus avoiding them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ankur, I'll come back to you. I did say I have a follow-up question on the agent securing the loan. I'm still able to get my head around that. Now, you did say that you're not going to govern the agent, you're going to govern the human behind the agent, right? So you're going to look at the credit worthiness of the human. But when we are looking at autonomous AI agents and the skills and all that, same agent can represent multiple different humans. And there is so complicated mesh that is out there. Being a regulatory body, what is the role like for supervision of these autonomous agents, accountability, consumer protection, that the agent is acting only on behalf of a human and not otherwise, not other rogue agents and things like that. Have you considered this? And see, we did lead the world in digital payments, right, with the UPIs and others. So do you think in the so-called the agentic banking model kind of thing, are we already thinking, and is this something that we can also take a lead?
Take lead, yes, of course. Why not? And we should. Now, the thing is, the way agentic models are going to evolve, we'll have to see. Back-end agents are going to be extremely useful for banks. Take an example of a fraud prevention agent. In the back end, it's analyzing the transactions that are happening, and if it detects a pattern which may be fraudulent, it can block the transaction. It should not let it go through unless it is specifically authorized by the person who's initiating the transaction. So we can use agents in a preventive way. Now, customer-facing agents are also going to come into the picture. We are seeing examples. People are building their agents, right? It's not that difficult these days. Now, what will happen? You cannot. When we envisage agentic AI, it is not a sentient being. It's not going to take a decision on its own in a way, unless and until you have defined the specificity. The specifics have to be defined by the person. If he says that I want to secure a loan, say maybe top 5 banks, or the best interest rate that is available, quantum should be between this range, and then there would be certain conditions attached to it. It's not going to just assess, my bank account is going down, it's below a certain
but the
threshold.
thing is, the agents will learn over a period of time. They know exactly your behavior. They are going to give you exactly the same data that will ensure that you approve the loans, right?
So the thing is, what will happen? I mean, human has to come into the picture somewhere, right? That is the key. You cannot let the entire thing keep on happening through an agent. Human has to come into the picture somewhere, and that human in command is going to be key when it comes to agentic AI. And of course, there would be other aspects. I mean, we have defined certain principles in the free AI framework that we have developed, and those principles will be applicable to agentic AI as well.
Okay. All right. So I'll actually ask the next question also to you. This is also on the trustworthiness of AI when it comes to regulatory bodies. I'm quite intrigued to understand how you think. So today everyone is saying whatever they're doing is AI, and everything is AI powered this, AI powered that, and we have AI. I mean, there is a deep AI washing prevalent everywhere, right? And how do you protect consumers around this? I mean, have you thought about some kind of regulations here, some kind of enforcements?
See, again, I mean, so as of now, the principles, and trust is the cornerstone, right? So the principles, that's why the first principle that we identified was trust as the foundation. And yes, there are certain entities where this AI washing is going on. So, I think the most appropriate way should be a proper disclosure. Any entity which is using AI or deploying AI, they should disclose it. It should be disclosed to the person.
Voluntarily.
Voluntarily.
Okay.
And you know, it's recommended in the framework itself. Now, if as of now it is a framework, these are recommendations. There might be guidances coming as well, and then you know, we'll be keeping a check that who is declaring, what disclosures are being made. There's also a recommendation that disclosure should be made in their annual reports as well, you know, so that people are aware that what kind of AI and in which form you're using AI. And it's not just a buzzword. It shouldn't be a buzzword. People say that, okay, so you need to, you know, there's also this thing. Each and every entity should create a repository of models, you know, and they should clearly define what model is meant for what purpose, what is being used in that. And that repository supervisors can always go and check that, okay, you say that you have these many models in place, and you know, whether it is actually there or not there. So these are the ways in which we'll have to do, you know, we'll have to protect consumers as well. And another way in terms of supervision would be using AI itself to supervise AI, isn't it? I mean, that has to be the way going ahead. Probably, you know, if people have their own agents, we should have ours. So these are the way in which I envisage that we would be going about this AI washing as well as AI deployment.
If I just may add on the transparency and explainability point you were making, I think sometimes it is overstated and at other times it's understated in the sense that we as users, we don't really need to have the codes open. Also because, frankly, I wouldn't have A, the time, B, the willingness, 3, the skills to be able to analyze it. But what we need, and you made that point very importantly, is to understand what is the logic behind it. What are the principles that guide that algorithm to behave in the way it behaves, and then to be aware in the first place that that algorithm is there and that I've been facing an AI agent in some cases. And also, and I can't agree more, in the past we have heard so many times, oh, but you know, by the time the algorithm is out in the wild, we cannot redress it. We cannot, it's very costly to fix, it's very costly to stop. Well, we have generative AI, we have synthetic content, that is algorithms that are beautiful at coding. So I sincerely continue not to understand the fact that it becomes very, very costly. It's true that with agents it's slightly more complicated, slightly. But it is true that we can use AI to check on AI itself by putting, parameters, by putting checkpoints, the frequency, the type of things that can stop the other. So actually, the possibilities are many. It's just the determination, the human oversight that needs to be there.
And probably that is maybe only way to do it, using AI to supervise AI. But only question remains is who will supervise the supervisor AI, right?
Still a human. It's still in our hands.
So,
needs to be.
Yeah. There is no audience question right now. I'll come back to you in the end if I have time, okay? Sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, all right. So, Kathleen, maybe I'll come to you now. So, see, we operate at the end of the day. You did mention saying that we need to be in multilateral kind of AI adoption. Many countries are taking totally different approaches. There are few heavily regulated on AI like EU. There are few where we only have sector-specific rules like in US. And Australia has this guidance and guidelines that now you have published and all that. So question is, how is Australian government coordinating with international partners to avoid fragmentation?
Thank you. And you know, it's the recurring theme, isn't it? As you said, Maria, this technology doesn't have borders. As I said, this has been a multi-year conversation with the Australian government. We know lots of other governments are thinking about things as well. Inherently, our national frameworks have to reflect our national context and habits and the risks. And as I said, one of the 3 pillars of our national AI plan is keeping Australians safe. So that factors in that. What are the Australian situation and what's the framework that works for us? So to a certain extent, there is something unique in that for every country. But of course, if every country does their own thing and things are vastly different, it undermines all of our efforts, and it certainly undermines that innovation and competitive point, which I made earlier. So it's really important for international discussions like this, for governments to get together and talk about, like, how do we embed those really important principles and norms around trustworthy and responsible AI. Certainly a discussion on the Australian government's international engagement in priority multilaterals. How do we influence those discussions? How do we influence global norms? How do we influence global standards? That's an aspect of our national AI plan as well, because there's certainly this recognition that it's inherently global and we have to contribute to these discussions. We have been, as I mentioned, involved in the earliest discussions around ethical AI. We've had representations at all of the summits in this series to date. It's one of our priorities. That's why as I said, we've got a large and very diverse Australian contingent here today. We continue to engage constructively in those key multilaterals, those internationals. We also progress a series of bilateral engagements. I know this sounds all public servicey now, but of course we have key bilateral agreements with our key partners as well, as we really try and embed those global norms so that all of us can benefit from AI and its applications.
See, you have been referencing this national AI plan and the pillar, like keep Australians safe. And one of the key things that came out of that was establishment of AI Safety Institute. So now AI Safety Institute is going to play any part in bringing all the parties together, or?
So the national AI plan I keep talking about is only a few months old. That's new, but the commitment to prospect of a safety institute is not so new. And of course, as I said, we've been involved, we signed up to the Seoul Declaration. We've been engaging in those international safety discussions. Our Australian AI Safety Institute, it has an acronym, but I will not use it. It's not a good one. AISI? I don't know yet. Haven't worked it out yet. But as I said, that's a couple of weeks away from starting operations. The government has announced funding for it in November. Recruitment is well in train. We have an incredible AI R&D base. We have some incredible experts. I'm sure one or two is in the crowd. I just can't see them. And so we really want to use this institute to embed those capabilities, testing and monitoring of frontier models, getting guidance out to community industry experts, which, as I said, comes back to that sort of trustworthy toolkit, that broader governance framework. But yes, that Australian AI Safety Institute will continue to engage with the international network, sharing of best practice and expertise and science.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. That brings me to you. I think UNESCO is again taking a leadership position in bringing everyone together. There was this collaboration with G7 on public sector AI toolkit to ensure that there is international alignment on trustworthy AI, responsible AI. So, do you want to talk about these initiatives on how we can bring the entire world to align on how to govern AI?
Well, govern AI, it's a daunting task, but we try to do our part in trying to align to really make it interoperable. That's the kind of the rude word kind of that I was trying to avoid governance system. And we believe that, yes, regulations are important, but they are not the only policy tool. So there is a whole set of policies that can be used in order to ensure that AI is done for society. And what UNESCO does is really to try and leverage each and every occasion to get, let's say, a coordinated approach to the problem because of the fact that it's a resource and can be a challenge for humanity as a whole, not for a part thereof. And of course, we are fully aware and we try to put first in the front also the needs of people that are vulnerable or people that are, for instance, in certain conditions. But we really try to have also, for instance, not only AI be, and our counterparts typically are governments, the first one, although we do operate in a multi-stakeholder environment, and that's how we met, for instance. But the idea is really to also help civil servants be able to leverage the technology for good. Now, how you do that? Well, with awareness raising, with endowing people, and again, the toolkit, we are really there to go from principles to practice. So give hands-on type of input, type of information that can be used in a day-to-day basis in order then to be able to leverage AI for the good. Like, for instance, by the time we have supported the presidency, the G20 presidency of South Africa in 2025, we have developed a toolkit to address the possible inequalities related to the use of AI. The question is, again, yeah, it sounds obvious, but then the question is, how do you do about that? So, for instance, we have in that toolkit even very concrete examples about, for instance, applying AI in the healthcare space, where we realize that many of the algorithms that are built by information specialists that have never spoken to a doctor. So something as simple as telling civil servants, you have to put around the table, by the time you are in the design phase, a multi-stakeholder approach whereby anybody that will be involved and could be made even responsible for what is done is there to learn and tell and also share aggravation. Like, for instance, everybody was finding obvious that it should be leveraging a piece of information. How many hospitals' records speak to each other? So, of course, if we don't have that very simple thing in the back and you don't address that, then the design of the AI, as powerful as it can be, risks being biased because you don't have all the information. I'm a woman, and typically data about, for instance, heart failures of women are completely wrong. One, because they are underreported, and two, because the symptoms typically are mistaken because the literature is based typically on men and of a certain origin and color as well, unfortunately, which means that by the time I have a certain pain, a lot of doctors, and hence also the AI, will not be able to identify that I'm going through a heart problem because it doesn't correspond to the usual symptoms that the literature has, gathered as pieces of information and on which that algorithm has been built. But this also translates into very practical suggestions for who is going to build the system, which kind of data, which kind of part of the population, how to test the design, how often to make checks, what the system might be able to do in reality and what it shouldn't be used to. And what you said as well, what is the error margin that I'm willing to accept or of which I should be aware of so that there is always the human oversight that allows me to actually intervene promptly and as needed. So this is the idea of having these very concrete tools, but also to have harmonization in the approach, because that allows us to improve better, improve faster, and address a key bulk of problems that are actually very much widespread. And too often we hear like, oh, but we are different. Yes, we are different with nuances. And so we can solve a lot of problems by taking approaches that apply in a flexible way to different contexts.
No, excellent. I think that consultation with everyone and getting everyone together is the key. And I think that's a similar procedure that you followed. You have been mentioning about this RBI's free AI framework and all that. I do remember consulting with industry, and thank you so much. You have called out Infosys' responsible AI toolkit in the framework. But I think that is the key of ensuring that the consultation and getting all the people together and agreeing to what we do. Okay. All right, I've been shown time saying that I have very few minutes left. So one last question to all of you, one common question. It's been really amazing and a pleasure. What is the one thing that we have done right in the last 2 years, and what is the one thing that we need to do going forward? Maybe I'll start with you.
Okay. One thing, the right thing that we have done is digitization, I guess.
Okay.
So, we have digitized a lot of process. We have a lot of data available, which is going to be useful when AI comes into the picture. And we have been using this digitalization in inclusion. It has helped our cause, especially for a country like India, where a lot of people have to be included into the financial sector mainstream. So that has, we have been on track, I would say.
So this did help us, customers with thin file or no file.
Yes.
Including them in the entire banking ecosystem, right?
Yes. We are on the process of that, and we would be having more people into the mainstream financial sector. You know that there are credit models which are using alternate data to give credit to people who have typically not been able to source credit. So these things are changing. It's a good way forward. And in the next 2 years, I would want more of this. I would want the 500 million who still don't have access to get access to financial services. Also, I would want AI to play a key role in the accessibility, because there are a lot of challenges around that as well. we believe that it's not exactly an equal space. So we need to create that equal space, and AI can play a huge factor, huge role
While a
in that.
divide exists, it can also be a huge leveler, right? So it
Yes.
can actually give good access to everyone.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, Maria?
Well, in my case, actually, it's two words that are both positive and negative. That is awareness and readiness.
Yeah.
Awareness, because I think if we were to have this conversation 3 years ago, the room would be half empty. It wasn't perceived to be the kind of challenge and opportunity that we are aware it is today. Readiness, because we have been discussing now, and I mean, we have seen different approaches in different parts of the world to this set of transformative technologies. Now, I still see, for instance, little discussion, or at least insufficient, let me qualify the statement, about, for instance, the implication of AI in the life of young people, in the world of work of all of us, and what it will mean for, for people not only to be able to participate in the AI world, but really to thrive in the AI era, because that's what we are heading towards, so we are very much in already. So both good and bad, but the awareness, the engagement that we see today, I'm sure are going to be leading to this engagement that will bring good for all.
Amazing. Awareness and readiness. Totally agree with you.
Probably touching on all of those themes, I think from an Australian government perspective, what we've done well and the what next is sort of one and the same, or it's the same continuum. It's on a continuum. So, as I said, we've had this 2-year consultation with the public. We've released this plan, and it's now almost like now starts the hard bit, right? We've got to implement it. And part of that's the responsible AI and tracking of frameworks and setting up this institute, but make no mistakes, there's lots of work to do in Australia as well. Part of the plan goes to things like inclusiveness as well, and how do we make sure we can spread those benefits of AI. It's around an enormous skilling task. I know Indian government is focused on that as well. Australian adoption rates in some respects are not as good as they should be. There's a lot of supporting SMEs and others. There's an enormous amount to do on skilling. So the plan is out now, and it's time for us to deliver across a range of things and really, as we said, get into implementation, translate principles to practice, an enormous amount to work to do over the next few years.
Oh, all right, fantastic. Thank you so much, and that is all the time I have. So I've been shown. Maybe we can catch up outside if you want, okay? All right, thank you so much. That has been an amazing panel. Thank you so much for being on the panel. Yeah.
Take a selfie with them
Yes,
in the back.
yes, we should.
Let's take a selfie with you in the
Sure.
back. Don't go anywhere.